现在订阅同盟会英语，不论找工作、升学或英检，表现更棒。快上
StudioClassroom.com。
现在请收听教学节目。
Advanced Studio Classroom is on the air. Having good morals can keep you safe. Today on Advanced. Hello, listeners. Welcome back to Advanced Studio Classroom. My name is Simon, and you are joining me for the second day of our August lifestyle article. The article is called Practicing Self-Awareness. Discover more about the value of self-esteem and good morals. And since this is the second part of the lesson, we've already covered self-esteem. And today, we're going to be talking about good morals and how they can protect you. Maybe not keep you safe physically, but keep you protected. I guess that's it. Because the title of the lesson today is Having Morals Will Protect You in the Long Run. Now, we're very fortunate today to have two panelists back with us again. Zach, welcome back for the second part of the lesson.
Good to be back.
And Gabe, good to see you too.
Thanks, Simon. It's great to be here.
Now, Gabe, I've been saying having good morals, but here, actually, the title of the lesson is just having morals. Can you have bad morals?
Well, yeah. I mean, we talk like that colloquially. Having good morals, someone who has bad morals, you know, someone who has bad morals will corrupt people with good morals.
Yeah. Technically, we have a word for low-quality morals. If someone
immoral?
Yeah. If somebody has low-quality morals, we call them immoral. Whereas if someone has good morals, we tend to say they are moral. There's a very similar word that obviously causes some confusion. Maybe one of you two can talk about that a little bit.
Talking about ethics?
Yeah. Everybody always confuses ethics with morals. Is that a good confusion to feel?
It's an understandable confusion.
So what's the difference between ethics and morals?
I think of ethics as more the individual behaviors that are involved with someone who is making moral decisions.
Oh, interesting. But I tend to think of ethics as rules.
Basically,
so those
kind
are
of
behaviors,
societal, just things in society that you would deem ethical or unethical, right? Where it's like a judgment based on peers.
I tend to think of morals as being more individual and practical and day-to-day, and ethical things being associated with
the
bigger
law.
Questions over the long term.
Okay.
Yeah. The reason I mention this is basically what we're talking about here is having morals over the long run. And that phrase, the long run, means over a long period of time. And the reason I thought that was interesting is because I don't know if all of our listeners know this, but Zach and I, from time to time, teach high school English. And one of the things that I know we cover with our curriculum is a number of stories that kind of are built around the theme that good things happen when normal people do tiny good things all the time. So we in particular, there's a famous writer named J.R.R. Tolkien, who in some of his writing talks about the idea that people often think good and evil will be involved in a huge battle, and that's how good will win. So they think of it as being a struggle between very strong people. But that writer in particular makes the comment that he thinks that the strength of good comes from normal people doing little good moral things all the time in their daily lives. So just living as moral people.
And there he personifies that in what's called The Hobbits.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's the book where they talk about that. So the idea being that often we think fighting these ethical battles is the most important thing. And, well, that's not unimportant. Personal morals and doing the right thing day to day can also be very important to making the world a better place.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, the little decisions that we make every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, make up our lives, basically.
So, advanced readers, if you like reading, and it seems as though you do, look out for these little truths in the next stories that you decide to read in novels.
Well, what do you think? Let's jump into our lesson for today. Listeners, we're going to do 2 readings today, and you can find today's lesson on page 41 of your Advanced magazine. It's under the title, Having Morals Will Protect You in the Long Run, and I think we should jump into our first reading now.
Having morals will protect you in the long run. Do you worry that being too nice can get you into trouble? You let people know you're kind, helpful, and honest, but some start taking advantage of you. They use your goodness against you. But are there benefits? Let's examine the advantages of possessing good morals. You don't have to second-guess yourself. Distinguishing right from wrong helps you choose the best path for the long haul. This saves you time, as you'll avoid indecision throughout your life. Your beliefs give support to your friends. If you honor right from wrong, your friends will come to you for advice. You'll be entrusted with more responsibility. Your family members, boss, and business partners will trust you with decisions, financial choices, and more. Your morals are the protection they need for themselves and their own interests.
Okay, so our lesson today begins with a question. Do you worry that being too nice can get you into trouble? Zach, is this a major concern for you?
A major concern. Maybe once upon a time, I think, yeah, sure. I understand why they ask this question, that if someone is too nice, perhaps you are somehow morally compromised.
Oh, this is a big problem for me.
What?
I worry about this question all the time.
Being too nice?
Yep.
I mean, yesterday we did talk about the idea of letting people walk all over you, and that's what happens with a lot of people if they're too nice.
Yep.
You know, they feel like a doormat.
There's a Rihanna song. One of the Beatles.
Which one? Can you sing it?
I can't
Can
remember
you sing
which
it?
Beatle it. I'm not
Probably
gonna sing
Paul
it.
McCartney, right?
Oh yeah, it's the Paul McCartney one. It's called what's it called? 4 or 5 seconds?
Oh, I don't know.
Something like that. Yeah, and it's the main line in the song is all of my kindness is taken for weakness.
Okay.
You know? And it's true. People frequently take kindness as a sign of weakness.
Well, this reminds me of the song, speaking of pop songs, I forget if it was Green Day or somebody else who sang the song called Nice Guys Finish Last. I mean, that's a phrase that we sometimes use to mean the same thing, that, you know, if you're too nice, you're not going to, it means you kind of lack that competitive edge and people are just going to take you for granted.
Well, people often think, particularly nice people, often think that if they are assertive and bold and stand up for themselves, it's the same thing as hurting other people.
Oh, like being too aggressive?
Yeah, like being aggressive. And I think the problem with that is if you are nice and you are taken advantage of repeatedly because of that, then you actually become not very nice. Even if you're acting nicely towards other people, you're actually really kind of feeling bitter and resentful and angry that you're being taken advantage of all the time.
Sure. And so what you're getting at is that bitterness and resentment could build up into like a nasty character over time?
Well, it's just, it's not sincere, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we all know people who are acting nicely, but you know they're not nice.
Yeah.
You know?
Sure.
Like we've had these interactions, and I think that's the danger, that if you're nice, you can get pulled into that. So the point just being, I worry about this question.
Yeah.
Do you worry that being too nice can get you into trouble? Yes, I do.
Well, what you were saying reminded me, I mean, the other side of that is that if you're too nice, it could mean that you're not standing up for the things that you should be standing up for, and society needs people to have integrity and stand up for the right things, not only for themselves, but for the sake of other people. And so that could be another downside to being too nice, quote unquote.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a big question here. So in the first paragraph, they lay out the downside. You let people know you're kind, helpful, and honest, but some start taking advantage of you, They use your goodness against you. And if you are a person that's particularly agreeable, you try to get along with people, you're a people pleaser, you probably have had this experience.
Well, this reminds me of some people who have, frankly, left our company because they are really good at a lot of things, and people notice that, and they also say yes to maybe one too many things, and they get overwhelmed and eventually end up leaving the company because everyone goes to them for their tasks and assignments. So that's a way of taking advantage of people.
Well, fortunately, there are benefits, and we read about those in the next section. It says, but are there benefits? Let's examine the advantages of possessing good morals. What's the first one there, Zach?
First one is you don't have to second guess yourself.
What is second guessing yourself?
Here they're talking about this phrase that means to doubt yourself or to question, your decisions.
Okay, so they explain this here by saying distinguishing right from wrong. Distinguishing just means telling the difference between right and wrong. Helps you choose the best path for the long haul. Long haul, that's a term from truck driving, of course. When you haul a heavy load for a long way.
You used to drive trucks, right, Simon?
I love trucks, and they compare this to that sort of process. It's a lot of work over a long period of time to complete something. This saves you time, as you'll avoid indecision throughout your life. So I guess you could basically re-express this as saying, like, having clear values and having gone through the process of deciding what you think is right and wrong saves you a lot of time and pain because you can just act according to your values instead of suffering and thinking through every single little decision.
Yeah, and not just thinking through each little decision, but also, like our lesson says, second-guessing the decisions you've already made. Yeah.
Well, and there's also a clear difference between taking some time to make the right and harder choice than suffering an indecision, where you're unable to decide for yourself.
Indecision, of course, just meaning you can't decide, right? Okay, what's the second one there, Gabe?
It says your beliefs give support to your friends.
If you honor right from wrong, your friends will come to you for advice. I think friends come to you for bad advice, too, if you're giving bad advice. I've heard lots of people give bad advice.
Yeah, my wife and I just started watching the Godfather series.
Yeah?
Speaking of
full of bad advice.
Speaking of mixed advice or going to the wrong people or mixed motives. Anyway, that's a different story, but yeah.
I suppose the thing though is over the long haul, if you're offering good and moral advice, maybe people will learn from their mistakes and find that your advice is more reliable.
Yeah,
I suppose.
Test of time.
Yeah. The third one there is you'll be entrusted with more responsibility. And I gather this is not only a work thing, though they do mention bosses here. They say your family members, boss and business partners will trust you with decisions, financial choices, and more. Your morals are the protection they need for themselves and their own interests. That's interesting, that you having good morals also protects other people.
Well, this kind of harkens back to yesterday's article where, while you have good self-esteem or you're practicing self-awareness, there's a relationship with other people. And so if you are a collection of relationships, people kind of invest in you and you're investing in them, and that it's all built on trust. And if you have distinguished right from wrong and good from bad, that people can just trust you more.
Or if you've proven to be reliable, or at least reliable in the sense that your boss wants you to be reliable, or whoever it is you're working with wants that. Because I really do think it comes down to whatever their interests are. Not everybody has perfect interests in mind.
Well, they do talk a little bit in our next reading about how you kind of protect yourself. Because sort of what's been laid out for us here so far is this idea that if you are nice, you probably will be taken advantage of. Yeah. But then they've laid out in this second section here that there are benefits to being nice even though you're being taken advantage of. But in the next reading, I think we're going to get into ways to protect yourself from being taken advantage of too much.
Yeah, sure. Because I had just mentioned about, someone who left the company because they were taken advantage of. And at this point here, you'll be entrusted with more responsibility came to mind because he really was entrusted with a lot of responsibility. And in a way, he wasn't appreciated for the things he was doing, or he was underappreciated.
Yeah, it's fair to say, too, that people don't always intentionally take advantage of you. Mm-hmm. Like, there's an English phrase, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, basically meaning, like, the person who is complaining the most gets their problems fixed first.
Oh, man, yeah.
And that does, I think, seem to be true. So if you're a person who's very kind of quiet and you take things on and just make sure things get done, even people don't notice that you're doing that at great personal cost necessarily. So, people aren't necessarily thinking about, like, who can I take advantage of here? I'm going to take advantage of that nice guy.
Right.
Instead, it's sort of a silent thing often, I think, that kind of happens.
Yeah.
So it may be intentional, it may be unintentional, but nonetheless, you need to protect yourself. So let's jump into our second reading. Listeners, you'll find that in the right-hand column on page 41.
It takes hard work. Being moral doesn't mean we won't take a beating occasionally. Bullies who want to take advantage of situations and people will try to run over you. Moral people must learn how to judge character, and they have to set boundaries. With challenges coming from many directions, it's easy to abandon some of your morals. The hard part is this: you'll have to take some steps that might be inconvenient. To remain true to your morals, you might have to leave a relationship or leave a place of work. And you may need to call in an authority figure to protect you, a psychologist we'll call Richard declares. A moral foundation. Richard explains that too many teenagers borrow their morals from their friends. Parents hesitate to define right from wrong these days, says Richard. They are afraid they can't live up to their morals in front of their kids. But, he summarizes, every household needs a moral foundation. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up to fail. Integrity is the fabric that holds our society together. Kids know when they're woven into that fabric.
Okay, and so we're given a note here that it takes hard work to be moral, presumably while protecting yourself over the long run. So it tells us that being moral doesn't mean we won't take a beating occasionally. What is taking a beating, Zach?
Taking a beating, basically it's just to experience a lot of loss or defeat and kind of going through a hard time.
I mean, literally it means getting beaten up, like people punching you,
sure,
kicking you, hitting you. I suppose here they're talking about it, sort of more emotionally or in a symbolic
as opposed
sort of
to
way.
Physically, sure.
Like having a difficult time. But they continue using this language of physical violence throughout the section, because in the next sentence they say, bullies who want to take advantage of situations and people will try to run over you.
Whoa.
So a bully, Gabe, what's a bully?
Well, I think we all know what a bully is.
It's a mean person.
Yeah.
Who, makes
you
themselves feel better by
picking on other people. Yeah.
Yeah.
You think of high school and junior high situations, but, bullies can exist anywhere in life.
And they'll try to run over you. Here, I guess we think of somebody hitting you with a car driving over you.
Or a truck, Simon. Don't do that.
Truck. Yeah. Moral people must learn how to judge character, and they have to set boundaries. So there's two things there. The first is judge character. What is judging character all about, Zach?
To look at a person and evaluate if this person is moral or immoral, and looking at their personality traits and seeing if they're a trustworthy person.
So when you are reading a book you're introduced to the people in the book. They're called characters, right? And the idea being that in life, people are also kind of like characters in your story. When you judge a character, it means you take the information you know about them and you kind of decide what type of person they are.
Yeah.
And so that's what you need to do. You need to look at people and sort of say, like, you know, does this person deserve my help? Or are they just going to take advantage of me?
Yeah. A great play or musical that I could recommend that deals with judging character is Into the Woods, if you guys ever have a chance to watch it, because it kind of, you know, the whole first half is about how you think you judge someone correctly, and then the second half you realize, okay, wow, maybe I misjudged or I judged too quickly. And we talk about people being a good judge of character. That means you're able to judge character pretty well or pretty wisely.
The second thing there was you have to set boundaries. So a boundary is kind of like a border between countries. It's the line that you don't really go past. And when we use the term here, what we're really talking about is things that you will do and things that you won't do. So kind of knowing in your mind how much is too much, how much you're willing to help, how you know when to stop helping. And you know, we use this phrase, knowing when to say no.
Yep.
I think that would be a good part of this idea of setting boundaries. So, for example, you know, being willing to help out at work, but if they're talking about having you work all weekend or all evening, every evening, maybe you have to say no to that kind of thing.
Or maybe calling attention to the squeaky wheel. I mean, Simon, you mentioned that phrase before, right? The squeaky wheel gets all the oil. Because what happens if someone is squeaky, then somebody else gets a lot of responsibility, right? And that person needs to step up and start setting some boundaries and maybe calling attention to whatever squeaky wheel is in the office that people are working with.
Well, kind of, this, I suppose, is where the lesson today mixes with the lesson from yesterday, where we talk about, like, being yourself, following your own path, and working to become your best self. Because generally, like that phrase, the squeaky wheel, someone who is a squeaky wheel, that's a pretty negative thing in English.
Yeah.
Like being a complainer or a whiner or a whinger.
Right.
These are all terms that talk about, basically like people who are useless people that aren't carrying their load and are complaining about it. And so you don't want to necessarily be a squeaky wheel, but you want to do it in a way.
No, what I meant was to call attention to the fact that somebody is being a squeaky wheel and that we should do something about it and not let them get away with whatever they're complaining about. Do you know what I mean? That's what I mean. I'm saying, like, I know it's a difficult thing to do in the office and it might make you seem like a mean person, but that's part of setting boundaries, perhaps.
There you go. Okay. So, with challenges coming from many directions, it's easy to abandon some of your morals. So that sounds like a bit of a warning here. Challenges coming from many directions, I suppose the thing is when you're having a difficult time.
Yeah.
It's easy to compromise and take the easy path.
Compromise was the word that came to my mind as well.
Yeah. Take the easy path is an English saying that means you go the way that isn't as hard a work, but doesn't lead to as much benefit in the end, right? Okay. So then we're told what the hard part is. Zach, you want to tell us what is the hard part here?
Here, the hard part is that you'll have to take some steps that might be inconvenient and that you're trying to stay true to your own morals. And you may even have to say goodbye or to leave a relationship or even a place of work.
Yeah. So you might lose some things to be able to hold on to your morals. In our next section, we're told a little bit about the moral foundation that we're trying to protect here. There's a psychologist they mentioned in the last section named Richard, and Richard goes on to explain in this section that too many teenagers borrow their morals from their friends. He goes on to say, parents hesitate to define right from wrong these days. They're afraid they can't live up to their morals in front of their kids. What does that mean, Gabe?
Yeah, I found this kind of interesting, the idea that parents hesitate or have a hard time defining right from wrong because they're afraid of how it's going to come across in front of their kids.
Like, well, I thought it just meant they were afraid of looking like hypocrites, meaning like people who say one thing but don't do it.
Yeah.
You know, like, you shouldn't lie, but Mom, you lie all the time. Ooh, 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 ooh.
Right.
You know, that kind of thing. It's an embarrassing sort of situation. So maybe parents are concerned about their own moral quality.
Sure.
And so they want to tell their kids to be moral.
And so that's why they hesitate to tell their kids
But
to be
they're
moral.
hesitant to tell their kids in case they should be.
Yeah.
It should be pointed out that they have failed.
Right. And so I guess Richard's reminder here is if kids don't see their parents modeling it, they're going to imitate their friends, who may not have the best morals.
Then he goes on to summarize, every household needs a moral foundation. This word foundation, it kind of refers to part of the building. It's the part of the building that goes in the ground and holds everything else up so it doesn't fall down. The idea being there that a family needs a strong set of morals so that it can function as a family and build other things on that. And so the idea being if your household, if your family doesn't have a strong moral foundation, you're setting yourself up to fail, meaning you're preparing for big failure in the future, even if you don't think about it that way. They then tell us that something holds everything together. What is that thing, Gabe?
Integrity.
Yeah.
It's the fabric.
Integrity. Doing what you say you're going to do, right? Being honest about what you believe. It's the fabric that holds society together. Kids know when they're woven into that fabric. So I guess you have to lead by example.
Kids have a good sense of perception about this kind of stuff.
Listeners, thank you so much for joining us as we've talked about practicing self-awareness. We hope you'll join us again soon for another Advanced Studio Classroom. Until then, I'm Simon.
I'm Zach.
Gabe.
Saying goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.